This is KTN News.
Welcome back. This is Morning Express. We are within the last 1 hour of our show. In case you're just joining us, you're right in time for the conversation here on Tech Central, Women in Tech. Allow me to reintroduce my panel this morning. Sitting closer to me, I have Lillian Kiambati. She is the Manager in Technology Strategy at Safaricom. Plus, she's also the head of Women in Technology program. On my far end, I have Eunice Thirikwa. She's the CEO of Talinda Africa. It's so good to have you here, ladies. I'm so happy that you've joined us for this specific conversation. Let me begin with you, Eunice. How did you find yourself in the world of the tech ecosystem?
So I studied physics at the University of Nairobi, and my project was in quantum electronics. So I did a lace, you know the way fiber works. So it's light, you transport light through cable. So I did a project to transport light through wireless and just do communication with it. And I built some radios, and they worked. And I got myself so involved in wireless telecommunication that I never stopped.
And this was just within your university year?
That's during my last university year.
Had you always known that technology is where you'd want to find yourself?
Possibly. I remember when I was clearing Form 4. So basically what I thought is that I was going to be an entrepreneur anyway. But I had this dream of having a technology company in Silicon Valley and calling it the Rikwa with a 3 and a Kwa. Yeah, so I kind of remember that when I was 18 or something like that, yes?
Yeah, your dreams are valid.
Yeah, they're very valid. Yeah. I'm almost there.
Yeah. So then on that same note, tell me a little bit about Talinda Africa.
So we are an IT company. We build ICT infrastructure for companies. We also do home automation systems.
Okay. Yeah. That gives me a better overview in the audience as well. So that means you're there. Your dreams are valid. You're getting there.
We're almost there.
You're almost there. Yeah. Lillian, tell me, how did you find yourself in the world of technology? Getting to the level where now you're also working for Safaricom within their tech department.
Okay. Mine is a pretty longer journey because it started when I was a child. And what interested me most was the radio. Because you'd listen to people and wonder, how can these people speak in Nairobi while I in Kitui can be able to hear them? And that's where my curiosity started. And of course, there was love for mathematics from when I was a child. And then over to high school, I came across physics, which I fell in love with thanks to my good teachers in high school. And then there was a family friend who was brilliant, and he was called Karaoke. And he went to pursue electrical and electronics engineering. And I asked my mother, what has Karaoke, who's very good in mathematics, gone to study? And she told me electrical engineering. And I said, whatever Karaoke has gone to do is what I want to pursue. So with my love for mathematics and physics, and Karaoke, of course, guiding me throughout the journey, that's where I found myself at the University of Nairobi, studying electrical and electronics engineering. And I mean, it's been a great journey. And then thereafter, I joined Safaricom and been there, I mean, for the last 16 years.
Now I'm even more curious. Did you two know each other at the University of Nairobi?
No.
No?
We just met in the field.
Right? Yeah. All right, and let's perhaps then talk about the challenges. Here you are, ladies, and you already are a fan of physics. You knew what you wanted to study. Technology was a space you wanted to find yourselves. Was it what it is that you thought it would be? What are some of those challenges, perhaps, Eunice, that when you got there, being a woman in such a male-dominated industry, it threw you a little bit back? And you were sharing with me that you go on the ground on site, and these are some of the challenges you face just because you're a woman.
So when I was very new at working, so I do a lot of work in construction sites because being in infrastructure, we get involved when the buildings are coming up. Like for us, we serve a lot of hotels and a lot of schools. So when a hotel is coming up, I'll possibly be involved during the construction. So when I was when I just started working, I was involved in a very big construction project, and I was very tiny. I must have weighed about 40 kilos. And, and guys would not take me seriously. So first of all, you're the only contractor, lady contractor in in the site meeting, everybody else is a man. And secondly, you're very young. And these are challenges that my team currently faces. I have a team, my team consists of a lot of women doing the field engineering, managing the sites. And when they sit in the site meeting, they're the only ladies, and most of them are young. And it's a bit challenging because men don't take girls seriously, especially those who look young. We have had cases where some of the contractors are trying to date the girls. We have challenges where people want to blame you. So in construction sites, there's a lot of blame games, and the weakest party is the fastest to blame. So they will want to blame the girls first.
Wow.
So you have to toughen up and to just expect this, that during the construction stage, if contractors are late, they will want to blame the girls. So these are things that you have to be aware of. And obviously, there's also this thing of assuming that because you're a woman, you got the job because it's a favor, rather than because you worked for it. So it's harder for the women, even in terms of competing for the work. It's harder to actually get the job than it is for men.
And that's just a stream of examples from trying to date the women, looking down upon them because they're younger and
they're ladies.
And they're ladies.
Yeah.
Then the blame game as well when it comes to work. Then there's, oh, that's a lot. So did you do it on purpose, having Talinda an almost all-woman team?
Initially, it wasn't on purpose, but when we realized that we are almost 75% female, we are now trying to achieve some gender balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the role of men in perhaps attaining that, like if you're in the field with your fellow colleague, right? Or just you are a contractor and you're female as well, the role that men have to play in that as well. We'll come to that.
All right.
Lillian, can you relate to some of the things that Eunice has shared as one of the challenges that you've also had to face throughout your career, being a woman in technology?
Totally, and it all started also from the university level, because in my class we were 60 and only 4 of us were female. So first of all, there was a lot of, I mean, why did you choose this tough career? Why didn't you choose nursing instead, or Bachelor of Commerce? It would have been easier for you. You'd have taken a shorter period to do it.
So these are your own classmates?
My own classmates and people around me, but my mother really encouraged me to continue pursuing. But of course, there was a lot of people discouraging you and telling you, choose a cheaper and easier course so that you can be, you're guaranteed of graduating. That was what I was being told. Then, of course, in the workplace, when we got there, there was very few of us as well. When you go for meetings, you're like the only female in the meeting, so you really have to speak louder and be clear and know your staff even before you go for that meeting, so that at least people can be able to give you audience. That was one of the challenges. And of course, sometimes you'd go and when you're challenging people, because initially I was in network management, in charge of faulting and all. So sometimes you would call some engineers and tell them, we have this fault, and I can guide you in faulting, through the faulting process. And they'll tell me, no, I'd prefer to work with somebody else. And they're like, no, I'm here. I'll be able to support you. So I had to prove myself. It was a little bit harder, but with time they got to embrace, and from there on we got more and more support, and especially in Safaricom, it's been a great family where women are supported 100% in the journey in the technical world. So it's not as tough as it is out there for other women who have sometimes to work almost 3 times as hard to be able to be recognized for what they are doing, because that is what is currently happening, where you really have to justify and prove yourself 3 times before anyone can even trust you with any job. And we've seen a lot of that happening, but at least I thank God, because Safaricom has been good to us and very supportive of women in this journey, and quite encouraging, and we're given equal opportunities just like anybody else.
All right, so let's talk about stereotypes. And Eunice, you pulled out one very well when you were describing some of the challenges. And one of the stereotypes is that people think that you got here as a woman in technology because it was a favor. Let's now talk about that. Let's go deeper with some of the stereotypes within that women in technology face.
Yeah, so I don't really think it's just about women in technology. I think it's really women in general. So a lot of people feel that a woman cannot rise on their own, a woman cannot work hard enough and just be. And sometimes they actually feel a woman should not. And it's a fight. I've had relatives as well, you know, just ask me, like when we started Talinda East Africa, and relatives were asking, why a business? Why don't you just stay, you know, stay employed? How will you run a business and run a family? I was newly married as well. So how will you run a business and run a family?
So downplaying a woman in general.
Yes, I think it applies to women in general. There are specific things for women in technology, like going up a mast and, you know, just dressing up in overalls. Sometimes I do. I look a bit awkward, but I really like it. And it's a bit odd to see the woman in the overall pulling cables, going up heights, configuring, staying. Technical work is very challenging. Sometimes you need to stay up to midnight working, because possibly you have to work at night for the systems to be operational during the day. When people are working, you should not interrupt. So these are some of the challenges. So you need to be home with your kids, but you have to be working at night. And there's a stereotype that the woman must be home before the man. There's a stereotype that women should not do hard work. You know, they should do a little bit of a softer job, maybe even stay at home. And these are some of the things that you have to face, especially with a team that is full of women. They also have children. And, you know, the children fall ill. The people are like, you know, take something simpler. Just be a secretary, because you go to work, you leave work at 5 and go home.
Something more flexible.
Yeah,
9 to
something
5.
easier.
Something ladylike.
Exactly. You know, not overalls.
Lillian, perhaps for you as well, some of the stereotypes you've seen?
Okay, there's once I got into a meeting. I had called for a meeting, and when I got there, it was full of men, and they asked me, are we waiting for someone else? Is your boss coming? And I said, I am the boss. So we will go on with the meeting. And there was a lot of doubts in that meeting. But at the end of it all, they respected who I was and my role in that. And because the moment you set the pace and you prove yourself, at least it starts changing. But the first moment they saw me, they were like, we must be waiting for somebody else, and they were looking behind to check if there's someone else coming. But for the longest time, and it still is, it still is considered as a man's world. And anytime you try to do something, you try to put up an argument and prove that you can do it, there are always people sometimes shooting you down and even doubting you and second-guessing you and having almost, you have to keep counter-checking and almost checking whether you're doing the right thing at the time. But over time, we've been able to prove ourselves differently, but it's still a tough journey. It's still considered, as a tough career for women, and especially when it comes to motherhood, being able now to create that clear balance. You have children at home, you have a husband to go and cook for, and that running around has been good. But it's been great because I have a very good support system where, my husband has been very supportive in this journey, and whenever I'm working late to work, he takes care of the children, drops the children to school, and sometimes when it comes to doing homework, he supports in every way possible. And of course, sometimes, like when you have to take the baby to the clinic, sometimes I would tell him, please pick the baby from home, bring them to Aga Khan, and let's meet halfway. And it's really helped me in terms of being able to balance. And of course, my organization have put very good measures in place to make sure that they support the woman in the workplace, which I'll talk about later.
How beautiful. But could we talk also about the solutions now? Perhaps some of the solutions that we need to start putting and reinforcing to make sure that the next generation does not have the same conversation that we're having. The next generation will say, listen, this is where we came from, this is where we are, and this is where we are going. So perhaps, Lillian, some of the solutions that we can start to table and work on.
I think as a society and in our culture, we need to encourage more girls to take up STEM as a first step.
Right.
We need to go out there and educate people and tell them STEM is doable. And since we have been here and done it, it is possible, and it is possible for girls to come into this space and be successful at the same time. And of course, we are lacking female role models who are able to drive these conversations. And I would wish more women out there would be able now to speak out and speak up and the positive things that have happened to them in this space, because I believe that would be able also now to change the mindset, especially of the girls who want to get into this field but have no idea of what happens there. And of course, there is lack of sufficient knowledge and information on opportunities available in this field. You can be an entrepreneur. There's so many opportunities. You can be a data scientist. You can be a technology security expert. There are very many opportunities, and you can be sure for every career now, you will definitely need technology, and this is the right time to get into this space. And the more we encourage, and now we have the power of internet in our hands. I mean, the mobile devices, you can be able, the girls can be able to Google and be able not to get into that space and just know that it's also fun. It's tough, it's fun, and it is doable, and there are a lot of opportunities that are coming up, and we need to grab them at the earliest possible time.
Eunice?
I like to take it from a social perspective. We live in a culture that does not encourage experimenting. And if a child drops something, they have to be beaten, you know, or at least somebody will be shouting. If the child tries to jump, they'll get hurt. So, and that is a culture that is actually driving less people from taking up technology and related courses, especially, you know, STEM. Because even before you even get to school, you're already afraid of doing something that's beyond the norm, beyond what you're seeing, something that you have no courage to try. We also live in a culture where people are told, you know, physics is hard. Makes no sense. You know, mathematics is hard, yet physics is just the basics, that if two things collide, like two cars collide on the road, the damage will be dependent on the forces. So it's very basic. So it is things we observe, but because the culture that we live in does not encourage observation, does not encourage experimentation, does not encourage courage, it's what's killing, even, you know, just from the basic.
And you've given Lillian has given a good example with just encouraging girls to take up STEM classes from primary school.
Exactly.
Get to learn to love maths and physics, and it's easy. It might be hard, but it's doable.
It's
right?
doable.
All right, let's talk about perhaps as a country, where we are as women in tech, and perhaps to comparison. And Eunice, you mentioned Silicon Valley, and I'm going to come back to you. Let me start with you then on that note, actually. Where are we as Kenya? And I would love it even if you told us as the African continent compared to other markets.
Okay, so technically, in terms of, like, for instance, the internet uptake, the fiber to the home distribution, and all those kind of things, we are really far compared to most of the other African countries, including compared to South Africa. We are much further. Most people technically are following Kenya. However, when it comes to encouraging girls and, you know, getting more women into technology, we are just, you know, I'm sure if the curve was drawn, we'll just be with the rest of the world. Not much is happening in the world. There's a lot of effort from Technovation, competition for girls to build technical applications that is actually supported very much by Safaricom Women in Technology. And I would say that Safaricom is possibly like our savior. So Safaricom, for me, has been very instrumental in my business. When I started my business about 2 years later, I became a Safaricom contractor. And Safaricom gave me a lot of work that actually, you know, lifted me up to a position where I was really a company and not a startup. And they just believed I didn't have to have anything. I didn't have to be a man. I didn't have to be a woman. I just needed to be somebody who is organized.
And qualified for the job.
And qualified for the job and organized enough to handle their work.
Right.
So there's a lot that Safaricom is doing. Not only not only from the wing of Safaricom in Women in Business, they also have Women in Technology, and they also support the Technovation, which is a high school competition, and they also have Tech Kids, I think supported through Fun Kids.
Okay, and Lillian, could you add on top of that perhaps where we are as women in technology in this space as a country and as a continent? And where would you want to see us go?
I think, just to break it down, I think in Kenya, when you consider the ratio of women to men, we are at approximately 12 to 15%, I'd put it at that. But we've seen like Talinda has really outdone themselves because they are at 75% women, which is very commendable, and I must say. And then when you look at, when you break it down also further to our organization, for instance, which is a technical company, overall we are almost at 55% women when you look at Safaricom globally. But when you look at technology division, where we have now the TAFIs there, we are at a ratio of 22%. And that achieving 22% has not been easy. There has been deliberate efforts by the whole organization to make sure that we get to these numbers, because when I joined we were at 10%, for instance, but we put in programs through Women in Technology that have been able now to drive us now up to 22%, especially in the last 3 years we grew from 15 to 22%, and I'm seeing us getting at least to 30% in the next 2 years with the same aggression that we are doing. And I'd just like to talk about some of the programs that have been able to enable us to get to this level and hopefully encourage other women out there to walk with us this journey so that we can be able now to encourage more women to join us. So we have 6 key programs in Safaricom Women in Technology, and it is run by a group of women who are very passionate about technology. And we walk the girl child through the journey from the early stages of life all the way to the professional level, whereby we have a Kids Go Tech program where we take kids during the holidays and we get to do experiments that help create curiosity in them so they can be able to build up projects, build something from scratch up to the end and be able to see that they're capable of doing it that way. It just creates that spark in them to be able now to fall in love with STEM. And this we do in partnership with Fun Kids. And then we have a high school outreach program which we run throughout the country. It's called 4747. And here we reach out annually, every year, 1 girls' school in every county. And we transverse this country to as far as Moyale, Samburu, Marsabit, and all the way to Kisumu, to Mombasa Coast Region, Tana River. And I think we have managed at least to reach out to 45 counties, and we are looking to reach out to Mandera and Wajir very soon. Will be coming to you. And what you're telling the girls is we bring them to our data center, and we show them the equipment that is just used to make a phone call, what supports M-Pesa, how is an SMS send, how is a data packet, how do they access Facebook. And we also show them how it is powered, how cooling is done. And that way they say, oh, this can be done. And we show them how batteries look like, rectifiers, which they learn in physics, look like. And it really creates a lot of curiosity in that space. And we have been able now to encourage them and see some of them even improving their scores in mathematics and computer, because we track the schools after. And you're told out of the class that came for high school outreach, 45 of them managed to get A's in computer science, which is also very encouraging. And through that, we also run another high school outreach, which Eunice was talking about. It's called Technovation. And this, we're talking about innovation, because, I mean, we have the next biggest analysts, biggest data scientists, and we have to build them up. So we tell the girls, come up with a solution in your environment that can be able to resolve a problem in your environment. And it is amazing what these young girls in high school are capable of. We have a girl in M-Pesa Academy who is an albino who came up with an app called AlbiCare, which is supposed to take care of, guide albinos on how to take care of themselves. And you can imagine how transformative, I mean, that is. And through that program, we were able to take some girls from Precious Blood Rerouter to Silicon Valley to pitch in an international competition and Technovation Challenge, and it's very transformative. And of course, we have campus outreach where we reach out to the different universities. And what we do it both ways. We go to them to encourage them, and they also come to us for industrial visits.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's truly encouraging.
That's
truly encouraging.
Yes.
I'd like to add to that. So I'm a judge at the Technovation. And what you realize is that Safaricom Women in Technology, so I judged Albicare. So I'm happy to hear that they really did well, and I can actually see it working. For what Safaricom is doing, I wish more organizations were doing that. You know, at least, and you see they actually involve the technology community. They're not just doing it alone. So more of us should be doing this, and it shouldn't just be about IT and technology in terms of apps and those kind of things. It should be technology in general. You know, creativity from making machines, you know, the mechanical engineers, the crop science and the like. I'm sure we would solve a lot of problems in the country.
And speaking of solving problems in the country, ladies, perhaps as a closing comment as well, as we wind up the conversation, the role that men have to play in this whole solution.
Okay, so first for women, men need to encourage their daughters from the time they're young. And I got a lot of support from my dad. So there's a rumor that when I was born, I'm a firstborn. There's a rumor that when I was born, my dad could not put me down. And he really never did. I got so much support from him, and every time I said, you know, I want to push the button, I want to go to another school, or I want to study this. And, you know, when I said I want to study physics, everybody was like, what? You'd rather study, you know, engineering sounds better. But, you know, I wanted to actually be an astrophysics. Maybe eventually, when I you know, for self-actualization, I'll work for NASA. But that day is coming. So I really wanted to do those kind of things. And I studied for that. And I got so much support from my dad. And I'd ask, you know, parents need to support their children. The community, what do you call it? The corporate community, the government, we need to do more to support girls, to get out of where they are, to get out of comfort zones. I know we are talking a lot here about supporting girls, but you can realize that we are only supporting girls who are already somewhere, high school, campus. We are supporting girls who are most likely middle class. So we need to move further down the food chain.
Right. All right, let me hear Lillian's closing comments on the role that men have to play. I love how Eunice clearly stated for her, it can start at the family level.
Yeah, for me, I'll speak more on at the career level. And one of the key things that I'm really happy about is the He for She campaign that was initiated by UN, and our organization is greatly participating in it. Mr. Bob Colimo is our biggest supporter for women in technology, and that has encouraged a lot of us. We have our director, Mr. Tibor Rirol, who actively supports the initiatives for women, and they have made deliberate efforts to make sure that women are given equal opportunities and are also supported in the workplace so they can be able now to deliver their best. For example, in a work environment, we have the creche, which is a good thing. It's a value add. We have mothers' rooms in Safaricom that helps us as mothers. We have flexi working hours, which help us be able to balance at least family and our careers. And they call it out, and they support us, and they champion us in whatever initiatives that we want to do. They are there for us. And I'd like to encourage other men in other organizations to also stand up and support the woman and be able now to encourage us and give us the opportunities when we knock.
All right.
We're not saying we want to be just put it on a plate and hand it over to us, but give us that opportunity. Give us the opportunity to interview, give us an opportunity to study, give us an opportunity to be trained, and that will be able to upskill and be able now to walk in this journey together and grow the numbers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.